The Need for Speed, released in 1994, was a groundbreaking racing game that set new standards in the genre. With its impressive 3D graphics for its time, it delivered a thrilling experience, offering a diverse range of high-performance cars and challenging tracks. The game's attention to detail in car models and realistic handling made it a standout title. The competitive multiplayer mode added an extra layer of excitement, making it a must-play for both racing enthusiasts and gamers alike. While newer racing games have since surpassed it in terms of graphics and features, The Need for Speed remains a classic that defined the genre's early evolution. Need for Speed 2, released in 1997, expanded upon its predecessor's success, offering even more adrenaline-pumping racing action, with an enhanced selection of exotic cars, from Ferrari to Ford, and an array of beautifully designed tracks spanning different global locations. This game elevated the thrill of high-speed racing. The addition of split-screen multiplayer mode further intensified the competition among friends. However, while it continued the legacy of its predecessor, the graphics and gameplay, though impressive for its time, were eventually surpassed by newer titles in the Need for Speed series. Nonetheless, Need for Speed 2 remains a nostalgic gem for fans of classic racing games. Need for Speed 3, Hot Pursuit, released in 1998, took the franchise to greater heights by introducing the thrilling concept of police pursuits to the racing experience. With a diverse lineup of cars and exhilarating tracks set in scenic locations, this installment heightened the intensity with a focus on evading law enforcement or playing as the cops themselves. The addition of new gameplay modes, including the iconic Hot Pursuit, where players could race while being chased by police, added an extra layer of excitement. While the graphics and mechanics showed improvements, they were still overshadowed by subsequent iterations in the series. Nevertheless, Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit solidified its place as a memorable classic in the franchise, setting a benchmark for future NFS games with its adrenaline-fueled gameplay. Need for Speed High Stakes maintained the series' high-speed thrills with a focus on intense police chases and high-stakes races, while refining graphics and introducing a vehicle damage system. It fell slightly short compared to its predecessors, feeling more like an incremental update than a significant leap forward in innovation. Despite this, its polished gameplay and intense pursuits still made it an enjoyable addition to the NFS series.
Unit 20 to HQ is going more than 130 kilometers an hour.
Acknowledged.
This is Unit 217 to all available units. Back off, I'm here now.
Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed shifted gears by centering the entire game around Porsche cars. Its detailed focus on the brand allowed for a deep dive into Porsche's history, featuring an evolution mode that traced the evolution of Porsche cars through different eras, while it showcased stunning visuals and a meticulous attention to detail. The narrower scope limited the variety compared to other NFS titles. Nonetheless, its dedication to Porsche's legacy made it a standout for car enthusiasts. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2 delivered a familiar high-speed racing experience with exotic cars and intense police chases. While it offered solid arcade-style gameplay and visually appealing environments, it didn't innovate significantly from its predecessors. The game's mechanics felt somewhat repetitive, lacking substantial innovation to set it apart in the genre. Despite this, the pursuit elements added an enjoyable twist, but overall, it felt like a competent but somewhat forgettable entry in the series.
He's not stopping.
Need for Speed Underground ventured into street racing culture with a diverse array of customizable cars and an urban environment. The game's emphasis on car customization and an underground racing scene was a fresh take for the series. However, while it captured the aesthetic of the time, Its story and gameplay mechanics felt fairly standard and didn't significantly stand out from other racing titles. Despite its popularity, it didn't push boundaries in the racing genre, resulting in a somewhat average gaming experience. Need for Speed Underground to continue the street racing narrative, expanding the open-world environment and offering more customization options for cars, while it built upon its predecessor's foundation, introducing more diverse races and a larger city to explore. It didn't bring groundbreaking changes to the franchise. The gameplay and storyline followed a familiar pattern, and while the addition of more customization was a plus, it didn't innovate enough to stand out significantly from its predecessor or contemporaries in the genre. Need for Speed Most Wanted brought intense police pursuits and a storyline centered around climbing the blacklist of racers. The game introduced an open-world setting, allowing for freedom in exploration and races. Despite its popularity and engaging pursuit mechanics, it didn't introduce substantial innovations to the series. The gameplay, while enjoyable, followed a familiar pattern, and the storyline, though intriguing, didn't offer a groundbreaking narrative. While it captured the essence of street racing, it didn't quite break new ground within the racing genre. Need for Speed Carbon continued the narrative-driven street racing formula, adding team-based gameplay and a focus on territory conquest. While the game maintained the series' trademark high-speed racing and introduced the intriguing concept of crew-based races, it didn't significantly evolve from its predecessors. The gameplay mechanics felt familiar, and while the addition of different territories added some variety, it didn't bring substantial innovation to the franchise. Despite its attempts to freshen up the formula, it ended up feeling like a somewhat average addition to the NFS series. Need for Speed ProStreet aimed to shift the series towards realistic track racing. Departing from the street racing scene, it introduced organized track events and emphasized car performance and tuning. However, the departure from the series' usual street racing vibe didn't resonate with all fans. While the focus on realistic racing was a bold move, it lacked the excitement and thrill of its predecessors. The game's attempt to innovate by introducing a different racing style felt somewhat forced and resulted in a game that didn't stand out significantly in the racing genre. Need for Speed Undercover aimed to combine narrative-driven gameplay with open-world racing, following an undercover cop infiltrating a criminal racing syndicate. Despite its attempt to blend storytelling with racing action, the game fell short in execution. It struggled to deliver a compelling narrative, and the gameplay, while retaining the series' high-speed racing, felt uninspired and lacked significant innovation. Despite its potential, it ended up as a rather average entry in the Need for Speed series, failing to leave a lasting impact in the racing game genre. Need for Speed Shift marked a departure from the series' arcade-style racing, aiming for a more realistic simulation experience. It incorporated cockpit views, detailed car handling, and a focus on professional racing circuits. While the shift to a more realistic approach was commendable, it didn't resonate with all NFS fans. The game lacked the excitement and accessibility of its predecessors, and despite its attempt to cater to simulation enthusiasts, it didn't quite achieve the depth or polish of other racing simulators. Overall, it delivered a decent racing experience, but didn't stand out significantly within the NFS series. Need for Speed Nitro targeted a casual audience with its simplified gameplay and stylized visuals. It aimed for accessibility by offering straightforward arcade-style racing on the Nintendo platforms. However, the game's overly simplistic mechanics and cartoonish graphics didn't resonate well with all NFS fans. While it provided a light-hearted racing experience, it lacked depth and failed to offer the depth and excitement expected from the franchise. Overall, it served as a passable racing option for a specific audience, but didn't leave a lasting impression within the NFS series. Need for Speed World attempted to blend the franchise's racing elements with a persistent online world, allowing players to race against each other in an open environment. However, the execution fell short of expectations. Despite the promising concept of an online racing world, the game suffered from technical issues, balancing problems, and a lack of engaging content. While it had its moments of fun with multiplayer races, it didn't offer enough depth or innovation to stand out in the crowded online gaming landscape. Overall, it presented an average online racing experience that failed to leave a lasting impact. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit aimed to recapture the excitement of the original Hot Pursuit series by focusing on intense police chases and exotic car racing. It delivered visually stunning environments and thrilling high-speed pursuits, but didn't offer much in terms of innovation. The game played it safe by sticking to the series' successful formula, without introducing significant new elements. While enjoyable, it lacked groundbreaking features, resulting in a competent, yet somewhat forgettable addition to the Need for Speed franchise.
Monitoring spike strip release in your area, proceed with caution.
Shift 2 Unleashed continued the simulation-focused approach of the series, emphasizing realistic racing physics and intense gameplay. While it improved upon its predecessor's mechanics and introduced an immersive helmet camera view, it didn't break new ground in the racing simulation genre. The game struggled to stand out amidst other racing simulators, lacking the depth and polish found in some of its competitors. Despite its attempt to offer a true-to-life racing experience, it ended up feeling like a competent but somewhat unremarkable entry in the genre. Need for Speed The Run attempted to blend high-stakes racing with a narrative-driven experience across diverse landscapes. However, while the game presented a unique premise of a coast-to-coast race, it fell short in execution. The gameplay felt repetitive and didn't bring significant innovation to the series. The story elements, although an interesting addition, weren't fully realized, leading to a somewhat disjointed experience. Despite its attempt to introduce a compelling storyline, the game ended up feeling average, lacking the depth and excitement expected from the Need for Speed franchise.
Target coming in. Taking damage. Unit damage. Vehicle is still mobile. Clear for pursuit. Lining up a pit. Sigmar, stand by.
Need for Speed Most Wanted attempted to recreate the thrill of the original Most Wanted title by offering an open-world racing experience with intense police pursuits. While it showcased impressive visuals and a vast, open environment to explore, it didn't bring significant innovation to the series. The game's focus on acquiring cars and evading law enforcement felt somewhat repetitive and lacked the depth to differentiate itself from its predecessors. Despite its attempts to capture the essence of the original, it ended up as a competent but somewhat average addition to the Need for Speed franchise. Need for Speed Rivals aimed to combine the thrill of illegal street racing with intense police pursuits in an open-world setting. It introduced the all-drive feature, allowing for seamless integration of single-player and multiplayer experiences. However, while the game had moments of excitement with its high-speed chases and stunning visuals, it didn't innovate significantly within the racing genre. The gameplay loop felt repetitive, and the overall experience lacked the depth to stand out among other racing titles. Despite its attempts to merge single-player and multiplayer seamlessly, it ended up as a fairly average entry in the Need for Speed series.
Dispatch to all units. We have a racer pursuit in progress. All nearby units converge on the location and support pursuing officer.
Need for Speed No Limits targeted mobile platforms, aiming to deliver adrenaline-fueled racing experiences on handheld devices. It offered high-speed races, customization options, and a variety of cars to collect. However, the mobile format limited its depth in gameplay mechanics. While it provided brief bursts of excitement, the game relied heavily on in-app purchases and had a repetitive nature that made it feel average within the mobile racing game landscape. Despite its attempts to bring the NFS experience to mobile, it lacked the depth and innovation found in other titles of the franchise. Need for Speed aimed to reboot the franchise by blending elements of underground street racing with customization and a narrative-driven experience. It boasted visually stunning graphics and extensive car customization options. However, despite its impressive aesthetics and attempts to return to the series' roots, it fell short in several areas. The storyline felt disjointed, the AI lacked depth, and the gameplay mechanics, while engaging initially, became repetitive over time. Despite its efforts to revive the NFS spirit, it ended up as a fairly average entry in the series, failing to capture the essence that made the earlier games stand out. Need for Speed Payback aimed to combine cinematic storytelling with open-world racing and heist elements. It presented a diverse range of cars and emphasized the thrill of high-speed action. However, despite its attempt to infuse a narrative-driven experience, the story felt cliché and predictable. The gameplay, while delivering enjoyable moments, suffered from a grindy progression system and repetitive missions. The emphasis on microtransactions also detracted from the overall experience, making it feel average compared to other racing games. Despite its potential, it failed to stand out within the Need for Speed franchise, offering a mediocre racing adventure. Need for Speed Heat aimed to blend day-to-night gameplay with an open-world setting, emphasizing street racing and police pursuits. It showcased a visually appealing environment and a decent selection of cars for customization. However, despite its attempt to revive the series with a dual daytime and nighttime races system, the overall experience felt somewhat average. The story lacked depth and the gameplay loop became repetitive, leading to a lack of innovation within the racing genre. While it offered some thrilling moments, it didn't manage to break new ground or stand out significantly among other NFS titles. Need for Speed Unbound presents an engaging narrative centered on the player, yes, and riddle in the vibrant city of Lakeshore. The game combines street racing with a tale of betrayal, redemption, and friendship, featuring an art style blending realism and urban graffiti. Despite its engaging storyline and artistic approach, it may feel reminiscent of previous NFS titles, offering an enjoyable yet somewhat familiar racing experience.